3. This is the Town of Canaan Town Council regular meeting. It's Wednesday, January 9th, 2022. We're having a virtual meeting this evening. You can join via the Zoom link on the town's website, and it's just a one tap and you're in. So hopefully everybody can find that and get in, or you can watch this on 79. It'll be recorded, and obviously this meeting is recorded as well. Tonight we have on our agenda, it's Pack 7, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance to kick us off. So with that, I think Tyler and Connor, since you have the flag, I'm going to let you guys start. You guys are going to have to unmute yourselves, though, for the Pledge of Allegiance. So can we get that going?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Anybody want to give us a quick synopsis of what you guys have been up to? Any winter camping or anything? Or you been busy? No? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And we'd love to have you back when we're in regular meetings. So will you guys promise to come back when we can have you into town hall?
I'm impressed with how many they're there. 14?
So this is actually a good story to tell. When we were talking about, having the scouts come to the meetings, all of a sudden I got all these emails. I didn't realize there were so many troops that existed in town, and we've got a full calendar, and look at how many kids are part of it. So well done, Scouters.
That's great, guys. We really appreciate you coming out, and keep up the good work. You guys look like you have a lot of badges on there too, so keep it up. Take care. We'll see you soon. All right, we had the roll call, and just Tucker, just to recap, have we had anybody new? I mean, I have a small screen here, so I'm on my iPad. So
Mike Morrow has joined.
Okay, let's just run through it one more time, just so we get it straight. Can we call the roll?
Sure. So we've got Robin Bates Mason. I still don't see Rita Bettino. Tom Butterworth is here. Mark Jimsky's here. Luke Kaufman, I don't see. Steve Carl. Mike Morrow has now joined. Maria Naughton here. Kim Norton is here. Hillary Ormond is here. Christina Ross is here. And Penny Young.
Great. Thank you very much. We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We had a special organizational meeting on November 10th and a public hearing on the 15th and a regular meeting on the 15th. We sent around some notes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections, deletions, additions?
Steve, Luke's on the phone. I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you, Luke. Thank you. We'll put you down.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it. All right, with no additions or deletions, we approve the minutes by unanimous consent. Moving on to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on agenda items scheduled for review and or for vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address. Comments will be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, subject to the total number of speakers. Do we have anybody that would like to speak from the public? You'll have to raise your hand, and I'll let Tucker recognize any members of the public that would like to speak.
Don't see any.
Okay. All right, moving on. We have Kevin Moynihan's on the line with his first selectman update. Kevin, you've got the floor.
Good evening, Town Council. Good to see you all. Happy New Year. As always, our first topic is COVID, and we're seeing a decline this week, consistent with what's happening across Connecticut in the number of positive cases. As you read in the press, maybe this is going to peak and then be gone by mid-February to March. So as far as the current variant, we started today with a new testing program at Irwin because HEMA4, which was the lab behind Waveny Care Center, had withdrawn from the market as of about now. And so we've started with Progressive Diagnostic, which is a Trumbull-based firm. They operate about 4 or 5 different towns around us. And using Progressive, we're going to have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule with increasing our capacity to 100 a day for 300 a week from the current 120. And we are pretty much filling up the clinics for this week. So, and this is PCR testing, not the rapid testing, which is available as needed at the health department. But and we continue our booster clinics. It's been a very active period with the young people to get them boosted, and so our vaccination rates continue to be off the charts, leading the state. And as a result of which, I think in many cases, most people who are vaccinated feel comfortable in the current environment, with restaurants open and people doing relatively normal activities. So, and I want to congratulate and thank Jen Eielson, as always. Jen's staff of employees and volunteers has just done an amazing job and continues to do an amazing job getting people vaccinated and boosted and tested. Capital projects, as you may have seen from the Park Street parking lot, we're installing gas this week in the middle of winter to Town Hall, which will enable us to install a combined heat and power facility to generate electricity in Town Hall and also give off the heat, which will lower our heating bill. And it's timely because we've had since we renovated and built the extension to the Town Hall, we've had a oil tank that's been faulty, and so it's very timely that we get onto natural gas for Town Hall. Eversource just advises, the Eversource plans to proceed in the early spring with the Elm Street, Pine Street, Grove Street neighborhood for the commercial establishments there to be able to convert to gas. So we're pleased with that schedule. Aquarian, as you know, finished up on Main Street, and I think all the sidewalks have been put back together. We will be paving Upper Main Street next year with a lot of repaving being done downtown of all the streets that were done in 2018 and some 2019 with gas and with the water main. So the 220 Elm Street purchase closed at the end of December. So the town now owns the building. We expect to close next week with our investors, and the Board of Education will then proceed to give notice of a departure from their current location early next year, January, February, probably February, March of next year. And the Board of Selectmen started our budget meetings yesterday, and we'll continue next week to produce a budget to go to the Board of Finance. Our grand list was up nicely to 1.8%. We only assumed about a 1% increase. We're not going to see the benefit of all the real estate inflation, I guess you would call it, until we do a reval 2 years from now. But the grand list continues to grow. I think we're just back up to close to $8 billion. So that is helping somewhat with the budget. But it's going to be a tough year. Inflation is killing us with outside contracts, and the minimum wage kicking in with the increases. So we're, as we saw yesterday, and we'll see again next week, a lot of departments are seeing inflation, not so much with our union contracts. We did a really good job with teachers and police and fire last year, and we'll do public works soon. But in the general economy for materials and energy and things, we're really seeing increases that are significant. The Playhouse plan will be unveiled next week, I expect. That's the schedule. I think people will be excited by it. And then the Waveny House plan also will be unveiled with the Board of Selectmen meeting next week, and then onto the Board of Finance in February. And then very pleased to have hired a new CFO replacing our Linda Osmani, who went to Norwalk, and but we've been able to hire Ann Kelly Lentz from Wilton. I don't know if did I announce this in December? I forget when exactly we. But anyway, Ann is an accomplished financial person, having served in Bridgeport and Stratford and Wilton. Interestingly enough, in Wilton, she did both the town and the Board of Education, which she discovered it's quite a bit of work to do both of those jobs, as much as you'd like to see that happen. But anyway, we're very happy to have Ann. She's an accomplished and very pleasant person to work with, and we look forward to having her. And finally, Monday night, we're going to have in the town hall meeting room, the Board of Selectmen will host a public information session on the proposed public safety cell tower at 1787 Ponies Ridge Road, which is the corner of Dan's Highway and Ponies Ridge. And I expect that to proceed to hopefully get to the Connecticut Siting Council by March and hopefully approved by early summer. So, and I think that's it. We've had some other very good news about cell towers I'll be releasing soon. The carriers are particularly active and interested in New Canaan, so that's very, very satisfying. So that's it.
That's great, Kevin. Thank you so much. Anybody have any quick questions or for Kevin while we have them? Or
This isn't Prime Minister questions.
that's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah, it isn't a Q&A, but Hillary, if you have a quick one.
I have a very quick one about COVID. Again, my total compliments in how you've run it, and to Jen. I'm just curious, when we calculate the vaccination rates for town, and it's a question I've gotten from a lot of townspeople, which is why I'm asking, why are we using 2014 and 2019 numbers to calculate the percentages of people vaccinated by age?
Well, keep in mind, Hillary, we have to use these SACE numbers. In the VAM system, where people get wherever they're vaccinated, as long as they give an 06840 address,
Yeah.
whether they get vaccinated in Florida or any place, they
Sure.
can make our numbers. And so it's a state's decision. They have age bracket data from 2014, I believe, and the total population numbers from 2019. That necessarily gives you skewed numbers. So
Yeah.
we're over 100%. We know people in those age brackets that are not vaccinated.
Right.
But our numbers compared to other towns are just off the charts because we work so hard to have community vaccination clinics. So I
totally agree, and huge compliments for that. I mean, my whole family was vaccinated through the town, and it was so easy. And I would like to be able to report back to people that it's not something that we're doing; it's a requirement from the state, or that we're getting the numbers from the state. I just wasn't clear why we were using those numbers or not. And I want to be able to give the correct information to people who are asking why we're using those. So that's really helpful.
thank you.
Thanks.
I just wanted to interject, sorry, Hillary, but I'm going to be going over the HHS vaccination stats tonight. So I think they're different because they're based on January numbers. So I just wanted to let you know I'll be able to review those when we do the summaries.
Great.
Thanks, Kim. All right, I don't see anybody else's hands up. But while we're at this point of the meeting, I just want to recognize, I see Kathleen Corbett out there. I just want to say hello to Kathleen. Thank you for joining us, Kathleen, and all the work you're doing with the selectmen. Appreciate it. And next item up, item number 5, sidewalk projects. Tiger is on. We have an approval of a special appropriation to increase the 2019 sidewalk project from $300,000 to $390,000. Source of the funds is a $90,000 donation from the Friends of Meade Park Playground to the New Canaan Community Foundation. Funds have already been received by the town. Tiger, you're on.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So as Steve mentioned, we partnered with the Friends of Meade Park Playground to install the Meade Park walkway that led from the parking lot to the playground itself. The Friends of Meade Park Playground were generous in their donation of $90,000 towards that project. And in order for us to receive it, and then actually we paid the contractor out of our funds in order to actually reimburse ourselves for that money. We actually, if you understand it, the budget was $300,000. We're going to accept $90,000, and you have to actually consider that a special appropriation and then expand the budget to $390 to take into consideration that those funds are coming forward, and then we can spend the money going forward on other town projects, sort of reimbursing ourselves, but it changes the budget number from 300 to 390, which causes a special appropriation. The Board of Finance approved it last month. We noticed it in the paper for this month for you, and then we're just asking for approval for that, and then we can utilize those monies on other projects going forward.
Great. Thank you, Tiger. Any questions from the council? Don't see anybody's hand raised. That's a good sign. Tucker, you see anybody's hand raised? Okay. All right, so we need a motion to approve the special appropriation. Mark.
Yep.
And I see Christina a second. So Mark Jimsky, Christina Ross seconds. All in favor? Raise your hands. That looks unanimous.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tiger. And thank you to the Friends of Meade Park. I mean, that's a great project down there. Obviously, I think we've all seen that playground and they've done an amazing job down there. So hats off to the Friends of Meade Park and thank you so much for the $90,000. That's huge. All right, moving on. Yep. Moving on. Item number 6. Patricia Spagani is here from New Canaan Town Players. We're going to get an update on the New Canaan Town Player activities. Patricia, you have the floor.
Steve, everyone, thanks so much for letting me address the town council and the selectmen this evening. As you all know, I am a resident in town, have been since 1994, a long time, with my husband Joel Reynolds. And we're here representing the town players of New Canaan and a request that we have to the town. So with your agreement, can I share my screen?
Tucker.
Yep.
Got
We just find you here, make you co-host. Where are you, Patricia?
And while she's doing that, how's the audio? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, there's a little whirl in the background. I don't know if you've got something blowing in the background.
Better?
Better.
Okay.
And
Heat
you
for
are now
my-
co-host.
Heat for my feet. Okay, thank you very much. All righty. All right, so let's do that. Share. Okay, and I'll go into full screen mode. All right, we still good?
Yes.
Everybody can see my screen. All right, so again, thank you very much. So we're here to talk about plans that we have for the Powerhouse Performing Arts Center, which, as this sign that's in Waveny Park shows, was established in March of 1983. And again, I'm here representing the entire organization and all of the people who come to enjoy the theater. So I'll point out that with this meeting, we will have already presented to Parks and Rec, and then in December, and then the Board of Finance last week. And Parks and Rec thought this was a good project, so we're happy to be doing this now. Okay, so I've got to admit that as I understand it, although I've been working with the town players and on their board here for going on 5 years, and the town players have been in town for quite a while, I'm not sure that we've actually presented or given an update on the theater and what we've been doing there for quite a while, if ever. So we hope to make this an annual event. I think it's good as a community theater within New Canaan, located in Waveney Park. It would be good if we, in the spirit of our public-private partnership, if we gave an update annually. So that's one thing I'd like to do. But so I thought I'd take the time, and I'll do it briefly, to give you and those that are watching an overview and a little bit of history of the town players. So formally became an organization in 1946. In 1957, we were recognized with nonprofit status. And in 1979, the town of New Canaan and the town players of New Canaan became formally a public-private partnership when the town gave its approval to have the town players make its home in the Powerhouse, the original Powerhouse, which you can see this picture, which we pulled out of our archives that was on the property. The picture below shows what the campus, if you will, looks like now. So that is the Powerhouse Performing Arts Center, and it sits, as you well all know, between the Carriage Barn Arts Center and the Rose Garden that's so beautiful by the Garden Club in town. But this is what our campus currently looks like on a winter, fall, end of fall day. And in 1983, then, the Powerhouse Performing Arts Center opened, what we affectionately call the Powerhouse Theater, opened with a 115-seat theater. So that's an important number, to imagine 115 people coming into this facility for our often sold out pre-pandemic shows. In 1985, the building that you see in the middle, the long building that with the stucco walls, that was built largely with members of the town players, with some builders that donated in-kind time. Steve Gravero and his wife Andy, who are longtime members of the Town Players, they're on the call tonight. And Steve was one of the original people that contributed to building not only the sets in the theater, but also that annex. So that's where we store our props and costumes. In 1985, I'll also call out, it was worth mentioning that there was a part of the agreement, in addition to building that annex, was that part of our courtyard would be enclosed so that we could expand the lobby. And that work was never done. It was put on hold or postponed until now, when we would like to resurrect that plan. And I'll tell you more about that. So we have just begun in this year our 75th season overall, 48 seasons in this wonderful facility, which truly is one of the best locations and best community theaters probably in all of Connecticut, but it's truly a gem here in Waveney. So our request to the town comes in 3 pieces, but I like to break this up into 2 parts. So the first part that we're going to talk about is we'd like to again reconfirm that this concrete patio that you see in the picture on the right, that we can enclose that to expand the current lobby. And the door that you see off to the right with the wonderful little windows, that would become then the entrance to the ADA compliant bathrooms that the theater so desperately needs for the comfort of everyone who comes to the theater, not just those that need additional help. So that's the first request. The second is that the current building, if I go back, the current building that sits on the right side of the campus, that's on the right, lower right-hand portion of this picture, that's known as the potting shed. It's currently unused by the town. That building become part of our campus and used as a rehearsal space, a black box theater, and also basically the home of what we're proposing for a new student or youth arts program. So again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So those are the 2 requests that we're bringing to the town now, in the hopes that we could get that basic agreement from all the town bodies so that we could go forth and do the fundraising that we need to do and say that we've got the town's support for these 2 items. And then the third request, again, which I'll talk a little bit more about, is that we are asking the town to contribute project funding for us. But if we could get the agreement in general on the first 2 points, then that again will help us. We can get that agreement in January, this month, as soon as possible. Then we can start the fundraising in earnest. Okay, so let me go on and just talk about the theater and what we do. So pre-pandemic, this is what our stage looked like. And these pictures are all from the very same stage. We 5 main stage performances. We do what we describe as our stage 2 readings, which provide readings for new playwrights to come and demonstrate what they do in the stage. We always have a family holiday show, which in the past has been British pantos, kind of a riff on fairy tales. And we do rentals to local organizations in town and in the community. And then we have had, pretty much since the Town Players took up residence at the Powerhouse, a student stage workshop. And that, I would say, paused, I'll use that word, in 2019 because the mother and daughter that were running that program retired. And we realized that we needed to start things up again, but then the pandemic hit. So we're working on several ideas there, but we think that's a really core part of our mission, is to provide an outlet in the community in New Canaan for our kids to perform on a stage. So these are, again, performances that we did pre-pandemic. So in terms of who comes to the theater, we estimate that about 3,000 people cross our threshold every year. 50% of those people are residents in town in New Canaan, about 90% overall in Connecticut. 20% or so are students, 40% or so are seniors. So it's a pretty good variety. And we think it's important that we serve not only our residents in town, but that we also bring people to town, that we become a destination so that we can bring more people into town, into restaurants in town, into the amenities of New Canaan. I think it's a good draw, and it's good for the community. It's good for the arts. We are an all-volunteer organization from its founding. That's been one of our core principles. It's in our bylaws. So for any given show, any given production, there's 25 to 30 people, and we spend a lot of time there. Since I retired, it's one of my part-time jobs, and it's certainly become my husband's full-time job. So he's built all the sets that you see here on stage, dressed by Deborah Burke, our president, and many, many volunteers come forward. So we're happy with what we do. We're proud of the work that we do, and we have, again, in all of these shows that you see here, sold out audiences. So that's our group. We do work with other organizations like the National Service League, who provides the ushers, mom and daughters, for all of our productions. One of the things I'll point out personally relative to Rocket Girl, which was the last performance that we did in the pictures there in the bottom right, just before the pandemic, that closed on March 8th of 2020. For me personally, and brought the rest of the board along, we realized that we needed to do more community outreach. So that particular production, we brought the playwright to town. He spoke at the library. He spoke to students in St. A's downtown. He spoke to the entire 5th grade class at Country School. We had a student-only production that had students not only from St. Luke's, St. A's, but also from a charter school in Bridgeport. So we recognize the need to do this outreach. We found it very rewarding, and when we get back in full gear, it's going to be a core part of what we do in the community. So this is pre-pandemic. So now if I talk about, come back to me to your screen. I have frozen.
Try hitting escape.
Yeah, I did that. Okay, let me try this again. See if I can clear it out. Wow. Tucker, can you stop me from sharing and maybe I can come back in again?
Okay.
Maybe that'll clear it out. Thank you. So in the pandemic, while we were trying to get this to work,
I went through your,
wow.
You may have to do a hard.
Okay. All right. We'll see how good my memory is. So apologies for that, everybody. So in the pandemic, we shuttered the Powerhouse Theater completely. So we went dark. So you can't stop me sharing. So at least I'm on screen.
well, I did withdraw the permissions. Let me see if I can make it go away.
You'll have to go out and come
Stop participant sharing. Okay.
There we go. Now I'm back. So all right, let me go back. So if you give me permission again.
Okay. Where are you? Patricia Slugani. Lead co-host. See if that works.
Thanks everybody for your patience. That works. Okay.
Gotta love technology when it works.
Yeah, when it works.
There you go.
Okay. All right. There we go. So we closed. The theater was closed to live audiences, but Deborah, myself, Joel, and Deborah's husband, we turned the Powerhouse Theater into a streaming production studio. So we learned how to use iPhones for cameras. We got couples or individuals on stage to safely socially distance or again perform as couples so that we could stream shows. It was a lot of work. We learned a heck of a lot. We're really glad we did it. But nonetheless, even with all that effort, our audience, although we had, I think, 409 people bought tickets. Many of the shows we didn't charge anything for, especially the radio shows. Some of the things we didn't charge at all, but those that we did, we counted 409 people bought tickets. So often those were families or couples, so maybe 800 people watched our productions. And our income was down 80%. Donations were also down 50%. And I will mention that as an all-volunteer organization, we were not eligible for any of the arts relief funds associated with COVID. So we were busy, and we were actually the first theater in all of Fairfield County to stream a live show. So many people streamed or they used Zoom, but they recorded all of their programs. We streamed live. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work. So that's what, now we can talk about our recovery, our comeback. We opened to a live audience with On Golden Pond. This is our season, and we performed Turn of the Screw. So what we found is while we have live audiences, we're seeing 25 to 30% full house, despite being very careful with asking people to wear masks and, as Broadway does, checking for vaccination. But we're seeing that people just aren't ready to be inside with people right next to them. And I think with Omicron, we're seeing that even more. So that's the reality, the new reality, but nonetheless, we are trying to keep our schedule as it's going now. We've also worked very hard, and I'll give Deborah Burke, again, our president, much of the credit here, in looking for other opportunities to bring different kinds of theatrical events into the theater so that we can better utilize the space and provide what we would call more relevant programming or additional value to the community. So one of the things we've done is we formed a partnership with the Open Arts Alliance, currently based in Greenwich. They've had a very, very successful youth arts program and for 8 years, and we have hosted them. You can see the pictures at the bottom through the summer and fall, and they're going to be putting on Cinderella as a musical, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, in April. So their students are basically age 6 through 18, and working with many of them. The kids are great. The program is great. They do community outreach to seniors as part of a youth leadership program. And we are hoping to replicate that program natively in New Canaan at the Powerhouse Theater. We're really excited about that. So more to come on that. Mr. Hastings, a very popular teacher at Country School, he's done improv at the Powerhouse, and he's there 3 afternoons a week from summer, spring, or summer, fall, winter. We're really glad to have Mr. Hastings because he's bringing a lot of kids, families into the theater. It's great. We had a couple of people in town come and say, gee, we'd really like to perform acoustic music at the Powerhouse. So we realized we can do this, and we're doing live music at the Powerhouse beginning with Jam and Bread. And we would hope to do that in December 29th at the end of the year. But we postponed that because of, again, the Omicron virus, unfortunately. And then we're doing other workshops. So we are definitely looking at expanding our reach to students, younger audiences, to older, expand our senior programs and do more, right? It's really important for us to re-engage the community and bring back the audience as well as attract volunteers. And since the pandemic and our reopening, we've had 2 significant volunteers come forward in town. One is Rich Kompanek, who is a realtor and also a board member at the Carriage Barn Arts Center. He's joined us as treasurer and has been a great addition to the group. And we've also gotten a volunteer who's working with us on costumes. That's a professional fashion designer. So we're, that's the kind of talent I know is in town, and we'd really like to have involved in the theater. To make all this work, that everything that we want to do, we need to invest in the facility. Although we've maintained it, and it's part of our public-private partnership. Town Players maintains the interior of the building for use as a theater. Tiger and his team do a great job maintaining the exterior, but we're bursting at the seams. Tell me this is going to happen again. Wow. Okay, Tiger, just cut this off and we'll do the rest of this without the presentation. I apologize.
All right.
All right. Tonight, I had my next picture was to show you what's actually going on in the theater tonight. Laura Haskins from the Performing Arts Studio in town is rehearsing with her students for their winter musical performance this weekend. So there's kids, 20 kids masked on stage rehearsing tonight. It's really exciting. It's good to see. So that's what it is. Maybe I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, so I'm going to do this way. You can see this is the picture. This is our model behind us of our new proposed building. And in the center, there we go. I'll do it this way. We can do this. All right. So this is the courtyard cover, the new proposed courtyard cover, which would be a wonderful addition to the lobby. It would expand the lobby from 2/3 of what it currently is. For those of you who've been in the theater, you know how small the current lobby is. It really does not lend itself to social distancing in any way stretch to the imagination. And the restrooms we have are totally inadequate for the audience and for anyone who really needs accessible restrooms. So this addition here, or not addition, but it would enclose the current courtyard and give us about 300, 400 square feet in addition to what we have. And then the other thing we talked about was taking the potting shed and turning it into a black box theater and rehearsal space. And that would add about 400 square feet on the other end of the campus of the Performing Arts Center. So those are the two pieces that we're looking to do. Again, this enclosure here, enclosing this patio, was part of the agreement in 1985. This we're looking to add to the campus, and those are the two key things that we're looking for from the town to do. So I'm going to switch gears. Actually, one other thing that's important. It's hard to see from this view, but if you can envision another piece of this is, and this is work that Tiger's got planned and the town's, I think, already agreed to, is this portion of Waveny Park is in desperate need of public restrooms to support the sledding hill, people that visit and walk in this part of the park. So there is the plan is to have public restrooms on this campus. Originally, Tiger was thinking about the potting shed, and I think you all are aware that what we said was, well, with the funds that he was thinking about that required restoration or renovation of the exterior of the potting shed, doing that work, it could probably add the public restrooms at the end of the annex, right? So we think that this is a really good option for the town, is to do the additional public restrooms at the end of the annex, and the potting shed then would become the shed theater as part of the Powerhouse Performing Arts Center. Right, so that's the scope of what we're talking about. So now what I want to do is go back to the requests that we had to the town. So those two building projects we could do, right? And whatever we need to do formally to get that agreement. Tonight, it would be great to get feedback on the scope of the project from the town council and the selectmen, and to get your support for that. And then the second part of the request is to have funding to support the project. We have engaged Carl and Rose Rothbart as our architects, and based on the estimates that they've given us, or they're working currently on the building plans. With the building plans, we will put out to bid, hopefully in late spring, so we'll have more firm cost estimates. But with the preliminary estimates that we have, all in for everything that needs to be done on the campus with the two portions we talked about, the potting shed and this, and for the town players to finish off what we need to do inside the potting shed. We need to add lighting equipment so that we can use it as a small theater, for the lobby so that we can finish the interior and make it, much more modern than it currently is. We estimate that the total project, and again, including making the courtyard all accessible, would be about 1.5 million. That's taking into consideration the inflation. Kevin, you even mentioned the labor costs are going up, and material costs and availability of materials. So we're at the all in with contingency at 1.5 million. We are proposing to raise in total the town players, half of that for 750,000, and we're asking the town to generously, recognizing it would be a very generous contribution, to match that for the additional 750,000. And where we are now, we have committed funds of 275,000 towards our 750. But again, that's why we're asking in principle that we can go out and do the fundraising, saying that the town agrees to the concept of and the project scope of what we'd like to take on. And then recognizing that from a town funding perspective, that process is going to, need perhaps several months to play out. But it would help us in the fundraising efforts greatly if we could get the agreement on the project concept and the agreement from the town that we could go forward in this public-private partnership. So that even, if in the best case, the town players could raise the total amount, that the town would say, yes, we can go forward and pursue this project. Obviously with Tiger and his team, since Tiger's going to own the building contracts. So I say thank you. I offer to any of the town folks on the board, selectmen, finance, to come visit the theater. You can contact me directly, Tucker know where to find me, or info@tpnc.org. We invite you to visit the theater to see it firsthand. We'd love to give you a backstage tour, free of charge, of course, and come see our shows. Our next production is Silent Sky, which, fingers crossed, will continue to open towards the end of February. And check out our website at www.tpnc.org. And I thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you, Patricia. Great presentation. Sorry you had some technical difficulties there. And I'll just add that Patricia was very generous in terms of inviting the council for a tour. Many of us were able to get in and see the Powerhouse Theater in places. I was up in the costume area. I've never been inside that side of the building. It's really amazing what's up there. It's incredible. And we also saw a model, scale model of this building behind you, and the Rothbards who are on this call did a great job integrating old and new. It really, the plan looks amazing. So Carl and Rose, I see you out there. So very, very nice design. The roof lines look great. Let me just open it up and see if any of the other council members have any questions while we have everybody on the call here. You can just raise your hand if you have any questions. I don't know how many of you were able to go through the tour, but I think many of us were able to do that. So we have a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions for Patricia while we have her? Oh, Maria, I see a hand. Go ahead.
It sounds like a great project. I was just thinking about the final number. It would be helpful to see like a breakdown of where the costs are by area. I'm sure that's coming, but that's just what I'm thinking. By area, by sub project, between the potting shed and the patio, just it would be better to see. Good for me, I think. Good for everyone to see sort of a breakdown.
And actually, I have that in the handout. You should have that in the handout that you received that's on your file, and I would have shared that in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
So I can give you roughly that the enclosure to the lobby would be $1 million all in. The shed theater, if you will, that part from the town players portion, so inside the walls, we expect for the equipment that we need, new seats, finishing it off, 200,000. Landscaping generally, because the patio really does need to be regraded and made accessible. We really envision that to be a space, outdoor seating space versus garden area per se, so that people could come out at intermission for the theater, or if families are using the sledding hill, they need a place to sit, put on boots, clean up, whatever, make use of the public restrooms, that would be maybe another 100,000. And then we put 200,000 in as a contingency. So round numbers, $1 million for the lobby, 200 for the shed theater, 100,000 for landscaping, and 200,000 for contingency gets it to the 1.5 million.
Thank you.
All right, and then I should mention, things like the garden that's there across the way, the beautiful rose garden. You know that there's often many weddings that are held there. So people come, they park in that part of the parking lot, they're dressed up, and they turn around, and I think you all know that part of the park. They turn around, and what's there right now is pretty much a lot of weeds, and buildings kind of dilapidated, both the potting shed, the end of the annex. We really want to envision sprucing up that part of the park so that it meets the same standards of the beauty of the rest of the park, which right now it doesn't. So it's all part of what we're trying to do. And my goal is to make this an all-in project. I realize the Conservancy, may have the courtyard in its 4-year plan or 5-year plan, but I don't know if it's year 1 or year 5. Be so nice to be able to just get the work done, turn this all over to Tiger and say, we've got enough money to do the whole thing at the same time. Let's get it done as quickly as possible so it minimizes the disruption to all the visitors to the park. So that's part of the rationale. Certainly as we get more concrete in the estimates, and if the costs come out lower, then we just need to raise less money. I'm not asking the town for X amount of dollars and thank you very much. It's 50% of the project costs.
Thanks, Patricia. And Tom, did I see your hand up before?
Yeah,
Robin.
I have a lot of history in the Powerhouse Theater, and I just want to share briefly that I was involved on and off with a hiatus for 3 years in Seattle, but I was involved for like 7 years, very actively. I know every square inch of the facility. I know the challenges and opportunities. I also know that through the years of being involved in various productions as acting director, producer, board member, that it was very commonplace that citizens of New Canaan would come to the theater and say, my God, how come I never heard about this place? It's a hidden cultural gem of New Canaan, and they keep coming back. There are many hundreds of town residents who see this as a key asset of the town. Some people have raised the question of, well, is this really a service we're doing for people that want to do volunteer acting? And that wouldn't be so bad, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as something that many hundreds of people in the town see this as a critical value of the town. It's a much less expensive way to view theater than taking the train into New York. It's important to understand that a few years ago, as we're all aware, the town appropriated money for adding handicap bathrooms, ADA compliant bathrooms inside the theater. So that's a separate project than this potting shed concept and the exterior bathrooms that would provide access for any user of Waveney and the sledding hill, et cetera. The interior bathrooms are problematic to the ongoing function of the theater because there really isn't a practical way to put ADA compliant bathrooms in the same footprint that the bathrooms are in currently. So what the lobby extension does is it provides a way to prevent brutalizing the space. And I think the town has some responsibility for making sure that doesn't happen. So one solution would be that. Just wanted to comment also on the potting shed concept. Is the money that would drive that has already been approved as a use of ARPA funds. And I think Tiger believes that the project of renovating the potting shed and then creating a separate structure for the outside bathrooms would be essentially affordable within what we've already appropriated. So I would urge, and I think we're probably ready to give the approval for that. It's not complicated. I'd like to hear what others think about the lobby enclosure, the new, both architecturally and financially. I'd want more input before I'd comment on whether that's, the exact correct solution. Others must have views.
Thanks, Tom. Robin.
Yeah, Patricia, I just had a question about the contract with the town. Was that, you said that was in 86 or 84?
85. Well, there's two agreements. One agreement was from 1983, and that gave the town players permission to use the Powerhouse Theater as its home. So I'm not a lawyer, but reading through it, right, that agreement would need to be updated to include the potting shed. The second agreement was from 1985. In that agreement, the second agreement, the town agreed that the town players could add the annex and enclose the courtyard. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like the town agreed in 1985 that we could enclose the courtyard. So now we want to enclose the courtyard. So I don't know if that needs to be updated or not, but the language was pretty clear that we're given permission to do it at the time. And
was the town going to pay for it at that time, or was
No.
it just? Okay,
No,
thank you.
no.
Okay, any other
Patricia.
questions?
Yeah, Patricia, have you worked with the town lawyers to get that verified? When I was in there, for your tour, I've suggested that you get that actually looked at thoroughly to make sure that it's still in effect.
So Penny, it's a good question. We've not done that yet. Tiger and I spoke about that, and we thought that it would be good to go through, this meeting that we're having now and have an outcome of this meeting be the request from yourselves and Kevin and the selectmen to whoever is the town lawyer to do that review. But first, anybody who's going to review it, in principle, I would hope that you all are having that review done in principle because you agree to these two portions, these two building efforts to happen.
Well, before I vote on something, I'd want to make sure that it was actually something that had been looked at legally and was, all in order.
We're not asking to revise the lease at this present time. We'll be reviewing it with the town players and the first selectman, obviously, and then get back to you at that point in time. But we're not looking at it that, you can approve it in concept as far as what you want to do, but the lease itself has other ramifications or other things in it that might want to be changed since it hasn't been looked at in quite a while.
Right. So I'm hoping that conceptually we get, like heart and soul agreement that this makes sense to go forward with so that we can figure out what the legal methods are to make it happen.
Okay, so we're being asked for approval of concept and then to come back to us again with the fact that all the I's have been dotted and T's crossed and everything is legal.
Yeah, I mean, the normal process obviously is going to have to take place. The Board of Selectmen will take it up in full, and then it'll be passed to the Board of Finance, of course, if it needs funding, and then it'll come back to us for final approval. So we will get a second bite at the apple once it goes through the process. So tonight's meeting is to bring everybody up to speed of where we are. And I think in speaking to many of you, I feel like we have a lot of support for the project, and obviously it'll have to go through the Board of Selectmen and through the Board of Finance before it comes back to us. So I think that's all we can do tonight. We're not approving anything tonight. So does anybody else have any? Oh, Kim, you have one more question?
Well, because the agenda does say
Patricia,
approval.
Patricia, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed my tour, and I've been to the Westport Playhouse, and I mean, we could really use an updated theater venue in New Canaan. I just wanted to ask if the Powerhouse is historic, and if one of the reasons I'm wondering is if it would be eligible for preservation tax credits or anything that could be added into your budget.
Okay, so here's what I understand, and I'm going to defer to Rose Rothbart, who's on the phone, who's, I think you all know, Rose was instrumental in having Waveny added to the National Register of Historic Places. So as I understand it, the proposed structure that we're talking about, the enclosure and then the use of the potting shed, they do not currently they do not require approval from anyone. If I don't know about tax credits, but in terms of perhaps grants, the only thing when Rose and I talked about it, that she said the potting shed could potentially be eligible for a renovation on the exterior, but there'd be no impact on the interior.
Which is what it means. It's exterior.
So Rose, I don't know if you want to add anything.
That's basically correct. Typically, it's only for exterior work and exterior restoration work, which is what has been approved for the potting shed. So basically, you could get a matching grant to get 50% of the project. As far as tax credits, yeah, I think you could go down that road. It's a matter of whether or not the town wants to do that, to go for that. Right now, like Patricia said, the expansion of the lobby would not be eligible for any sort of historic preservation funding. There are other types of grants, including, cultural grants, things like that. And I believe the Powerhouse is looking at all of those types of things. But as far as anyone coming down here and approving what's going on right now, no, there's no requirement there. And in the design, our approach has been to make it as unobtrusive as possible and make it fitting with what's there. So with our background, we try to go by the guidelines there, and at the same time, give the town players what they need. So it's up to the town whether they want to go for the funding. You have to do it at a certain phase. And so the town would have to decide kind of early on whether to do that. I hope that answers it.
So that means they'd have to go on the state historic register, or?
No, they're already on it. When you're on the National Register, you're automatically on that. So, it would be a pretty straightforward, because the potting shed would definitely qualify for funding and for matching grants, and probably for tax credits. You're right, Kim.
Thank you very much.
Would there
Thanks.
have to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Maria.
Would there have to be a public hearing on this in any way? Because it seems to me like the look is changing a lot. Is that something you have to bring to the public in any way? Just like Tom was asking, about our thoughts on
We've met with.
overall design and whatever. Is that something you would do in a public hearing?
Well, we have to go before P&Z, I assume, at some point.
So just whatever public portion of whatever meeting you're presenting at.
That's all I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're substantially changing the building, so it would have to go to P&Z, and the whole new design would have to be approved. So, and that's why going through the process, we need to sort of give the thumbs up that we support the idea, but obviously there's a lot of work to do yet in terms of fundraising and approvals and moving through the whole process. So
Steve, if I can just clarify, the agenda does not call for a vote tonight. We submitted a revised agenda that was just for an update. So we're not asking town council to vote this evening.
That's correct. Thank you, Tucker.
But what I need guidance on, being responsible for the fundraising, is I need guidance, and it doesn't have to happen tonight. Tiger, Steve, Kevin, you can come, give me feedback afterwards. But my question formally to the town is, at what point can I say to prospective donors, we have the town's support for this project scope, and we're looking for any and all donors, including major donors, that would be, willing to contribute to this scope of the project as we've defined it. So that's what I'm, looking for guidance on, when I can make that statement and go make the investment on, seeking funds.
Patricia, I would wait until the Board of Selectmen gives you the green light, because that's where the project starts. So, you've got to get their approval before it even goes to the Board of Finance. So once it goes to the Board of Selectmen, that's a good indicator of how this is going to go. So I'd at least wait that long. Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I asked Patricia the question. I mean, initially you talked about possibly asking for ARPA funds. And this is a big ask in terms of half of the fundraising project. And as Steve says, the selectmen will discuss it next week. But I'd like more clarity in terms of whether you're expecting grant funds from the town general fund or ARPA funds. And we're not clear where we're going with the ARPA funds yet. We're waiting for the results of the community foundation solicitation, or survey, I should say.
So if what I've presented here tonight is our best case scenario, right, in terms of a 50-50 partnership in the funding. And I would ask the town to consider two things: the appropriate source of those funds, whether, as I believe, this project represents economic development opportunity for the town, in which case it would qualify, as I understand it, under requests for ARPA funding. Or the town may look at this and say, town players hasn't contributed, the town have not contributed to the Powerhouse project capital improvements, capital investment in the past. Well, we see this as an opportunity to make this one-time investment, and we should put this in the town budget, or we should split it partially between ARPA and partially between the town budget.
Patricia, let me, it's not true. I think we did do a roof, and I think we're doing the ADA bathrooms inside. So it's not that the town didn't have a current obligation to maintain the exterior of the building. Personally, I find the closing in the new structure an attractive proposition. Powerhouse as a adjunct is something I think everyone has to buy onto, and also the proportion of the money. 50% is might be a big ask, but I think to some extent that's why it's important. And the Board of Finance, I don't know what the selectmen will do next week, but we will certainly make a decision, and then probably leave it up to the Board of Finance.
So if the town said, at the one extreme, you say, yes, this is something that we want to do and we want to make this investment in, and we'll meet you 50-50. That's the end of the spectrum. Other end of the spectrum says, we really like this project. The design is great, but we can't see our way into supporting it financially. If you go raise the funding, go raise the amount, town players, then yes, you have our agreement to do it, right? So I'm hoping that somewhere between there's some funding participation from the town. But that's why, in my mind, what I'm asking you, the town, to do is to kind of separate into two stages. One, agree in principle to the project and challenge me to go raise as much as I can, with everybody's support here. And then the second piece of it is determine what the town's appropriate contribution is to what we're doing. So, you know, are we representing enough value back to the town, right? Come challenge us. Are we representing that much value back to the town? So that's why I'm looking at it as these two requests and these two pieces, so that I can go again to our town residents and say, town party members, boards believe this is a good project for the town. Help us make this happen. But I can't really do that right now.
Yeah, but I think by the end of February, you'll have the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So that's why I think it's important why you have the town council here to give some indication how they feel about a 50-50 contribution. That I personally, you know, it sort of relates to your capacity to fundraise. And
right. And like I said, we're about 275. We have outstanding another $80,000 in outstanding grants, which would bring us to about 350. And I'm giving those, you know, I don't know, better than 50-50 chance anyway. So if we're at 350, we're at, you know, better almost halfway to where we need to be at that 750 mark. And as time goes on, we will be able to refine the amount too, and hopefully find that we don't need that much. But again, that's at the outside of where we are now. So,
Okay.
Say something, Steve.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Patricia, I think you're probably just going to continue to repeat yourself. I just want to kind of frame it in the sense that, you know, there are steps that need to happen. I think I echo what Steve said, which is conceptually, I would support something like this. I'm very supportive of PPPs, and I think they're great assets for the community. In terms of how much the town is willing to support the project and where the funds would come from are clearly up for debate. But I certainly would support the scope of your project, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right, so I think we've beaten this one up pretty well. And Patricia, I want to thank you on behalf of the council. And obviously, when a private organization like Town Players comes up with $750,000, which amounts to 50% of a project like this, it has our attention, and it has it in a positive way. So continue the good work, and we look forward to hearing from you again. And hopefully the next time we meet, we'll be voting on something. So good luck. And
That. And if I can make one last point about funding. Somebody asked about grants. We are applying to Connecticut Cultural Arts grants. The grants that we've applied for are specifically for operational funding, which is good because we did, you know, we do need those funds. And so far, we've received $20,000 in operational grants, right, for operations. So that's going to help us, allow us to contribute, you know, more of our own savings into the project.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patricia. Moving on. Next item up on the agenda, item number 7, New Canaan Athletic Foundation. We have an update from the New Canaan Athletic Foundation. It's the Mike and Mike show, Mike Murphy and Mike Benevento. So just a brief overview. The New Canaan Athletic Foundation is sort of I view it as the halo foundation of all things sports in town. They take care of the big picture stuff from fields and facilities and some of the capital projects that go on. Benefits from whether your kids are 5 and 6 years old as Lambs coming onto the field for the first time, or whether they're graduating as seniors as Rams at New Canaan High School. The New Canaan Athletic Foundation pretty much covers the full spectrum of everything in town, capital project wise. So with that, Mike and Mike, I guess Mike Benevento, you're up first.
Thanks, Steve. That's a kind introduction. And yes, you find in our mission statement, we're about all sports and community. Town Council, thanks for having us. Kathleen, Kevin, thanks for having us. I'll be brief in my statements. I've come to give an update on some of the things that are covered in the memorandum of understanding that we signed at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, where the NCAF collects the player use fees from all of the athletes in town that utilize the fields both in the spring and summer through the organizations. And then also what was really conceptualized as the enterprise zone, where the Athletic Foundation runs the fields from June 15th to August 15th as I say for profit, but it's really just for the town enterprise organization where we rent out the facilities in order to get money back into the town in order for turf replacement. So just briefly, we obviously didn't have any spring sports in 2020. This year, spring of 2021, we had roughly 2,170 athletes that are charged a $25 player use fee. That came to roughly $54,250. In the fall, we had roughly 1,585 athletes that were charged the player use fee for a total of roughly $39,575. So in total, the player use fees for the 2021 spring and fall seasons came to $93,825. If you'll recall, the way that money is now dispersed, 50% of it goes into an enhancements account, which is held at the Community Foundation, which is for future capital projects to enhance the field structures under our master plan. And 50% of it goes into a turf replacement account, which is also held at the Community Foundation. And that is to create an endowment so that when the turf that we've laid both in Dunning and through Waveney Park comes to the end of its useful life, that the Athletic Foundation is able to contribute to the replacement of those fields. As you know, that we ran into a problem in 2016, which is really the formation of, or part of the formation of the whole Athletic Foundation. So good work there, roughly $94,000 in player use fees, 50% into enhancements account, 50% into the turf replacement account. The next thing that I'll go over is the enterprise zone results, and this is something I'm really excited about because this was formed, really conceptually in partnership with town council and government, really spearheaded by Leo Carl, as we kind of conceptualized this back in 2018, and then it came to formation. And our idea was we wanted to show off these great facilities, and we also wanted to generate some revenues off of these facilities. And we wanted to go from a kind of a walk, or walk to a jog to a run, just to give you a sense of where we are. 2019, the first year under the operations, we did $30,975 in gross revenues. 2020, in a COVID year, we did $67,095 in gross revenues. This past year, 2021, where we're really starting to get our footing and get our name out there in terms of organizations that come and use our fields for rentals and for tournaments, we were up 22% and did $81,675 in gross revenues. I would give all the credit to that number to Bobby Rushton, who's done an incredible job, kind of running with the concept of the enterprise zone, working in conjunction with Steve and Steve Benko, Jay, and John Howe and Tiger, really just in good partnership. It's really started to formalize and come to fruition what we envisioned 3 years ago. And I think probably the best thing for all of us is the feedback we get from other people coming into town is that we have the absolute premier facilities in the county, really in the state, and they marvel at what we've done and the tournaments and things that we're able to host. And so it's a credit to everybody that was there at the beginning of the Athletic Foundation, but really proud of the work that Bobby Rushton has done. Lastly, I'll just give you a quick update on our master plan and our fundraising. We run roughly now, we have about $500,000 in our enhancements account as part of our capital campaign to execute on our master plan. I think that we were looking to do the first two projects in the master plan are to renovate the Dunning Stadium and the area in and around Dunning Stadium and the press box, and then also a new varsity baseball field. We were hopeful to get some of that done in the summer of 2022. I think in talking to some of the design work that we've done with Richter and Segan and others, it's probably, it's just taking a little bit longer to get that design work done. And since we have that window of the summer to get to execute on the master plan and those capital projects, it's likely that it's going to be pushed out a little bit. It's not going to deter our fundraising efforts as we continue to do extremely well. And I would say there's a ton of support and momentum that we've gotten over this past year in terms of executing on this master plan. But in terms of where we are for the next couple of months, we're still working in conjunction with town, but getting kind of nailing down some of the details on the design work in order to execute on the plan. So I said I'd be brief. And Mike, I don't know if you have anything that you need to add, but that's my update.
No, Mike, I think you hit it. It's just the, as you said, the proof of concept is really coming into focus now, which is really exciting.
That's great, guys. Thank you so much. And Mike, just, I'll open up the floor if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Mike or Mike? Okay. Mike B, can you remind us varsity baseball field location and what that could potentially look like?
Sure. So as part of the master plan and the area that we're kind of covering, we talk about moving the varsity baseball field from Meade Park up to Capo Field, which is located next to kind of off of the back of Waveny. What's the building over there? The rec building. The Lapham Center, correct. Yeah. Which is currently used as a JV baseball field. But from our standpoint, it would allow, and really there's a ton of momentum from the baseball community. It would allow a varsity athlete to be able to stay on campus and not have to take a bus to their home games, which, there's Meade Park's an incredible field, a great venue, a great town venue. But in terms of upgrading to a place where you're looking for varsity, varsity level stadium type seating, that's what we'd look to do into that corner. And so that was what was built into the original master plan by Richter and Segan.
That's great. Yeah, I remember seeing some photos, and that would be amazing for the players to be able to stay right on campus and literally be able to walk to their games rather than trying to figure out how to get there. And there's a lot less geese up there than there is at Meade. All good.
Exactly.
All right. And any other questions for Mike? Oh, I see Mark. Go ahead.
No, I just want to thank Mike and say I'm not surprised Mike gave a great presentation since he's a Bucknellian. So thanks for all you do.
That's great, guys. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. We've had three great organizations tonight. Item number 8 is the Waveney Park Conservancy. We've got a 5-year presentation by Steve Boshenstein. I'm butchering your name, Steve. I'm sorry. You'll have to correct me. But we're so lucky in this town. I mean, we've got the Waveney Conservancy following the Athletic Foundation, following the town players. I mean, where else can you have 3 items like this on your agenda? Just amazing. So Steve, take us away.
Well, thank you, Steve. And thanks everybody for giving me a chance to give you an update on our activities. And what I'd like to do tonight is do just that, give you an update on some of our activities and also some of our plans looking forward. And then finally, we are going to be making a request that you support a funding allocation for the Waveney Park improvements on a recurring basis in the town's budget. So you know what, Steve, do you mind if can I share a document here?
Yeah, I gave you a co-host, Steve.
Okay, great. Let's see if I can find this. There it is. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Terrific.
Yep, that's good.
Okay. What I thought I'd like to do is let me just mess with one thing here. What I thought I'd like to begin with doing is just to provide a little bit of context on the park itself and the genesis of the Waveney Park Conservancy. And I'll just begin by saying, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anybody that Waveney Park is one of the most heavily utilized parks, not only in New Canaan, but in Southern Connecticut. And we literally have thousands of visitors weekly. Now, Now, historically, before our founding, I think it's just a fact that the town of New Canaan dedicated relatively few resources and relatively little attention to the upkeep and improvement of Waveny. And as a result, there was considerable deferred maintenance building up in the park. And fortunately, a number of town officials, including Kevin, recognized that, and they came up with the idea to seek the founding of the Waveney Park Conservancy, which is partly modeled after the Central Park Conservancy in New York, as a mechanism to focus more attention on the care, maintenance, and improvement of Waveney. And specifically, our mission is to act as an advocate for the parklands side of Waveney, to identify capital improvement and critical maintenance projects within the park, and then to help fund and execute these projects in partnership with the town of New Canaan. And since its founding in 2015, the Conservancy, either independently or with funding collaboration from the town or Garden Club, has completed numerous landscaping and maintenance projects. And I'll go over some of those in just a minute. But to provide some perspective, since our founding in 2015, we've raised over $2.3 million toward the revitalization of Waveney. And to date, we've deployed $1.3 million. This next slide, and I apologize for the fact that this table is quite small. I hope you can all read it. But this next slide just provides a brief summary of some of the projects that we've been involved with. And it also gives you an idea of the amount the Waveney Park Conservancy has contributed to the projects and the amount the town has contributed to the projects. Just to provide a very brief review, because I think most of you are familiar with the major projects we've undertaken. One of the largest would be the restoration of the Jenia Meadow. That's the former cornfield in the center of the park, which prior to its restoration was literally used as something of a dumping ground by the town for concrete and asphalt. And if you've been down there recently, the new meadow is starting to come in beautifully. We still have some work to do on it, but we're hoping to wrap up most of the work that's required by next year, but it's beginning to look beautiful. The next major project, which is very visible, is the Anderson Pond restoration. Again, prior to our founding, that pond was beginning to fill in and it was in danger of becoming wetlands. And once a pond becomes wetlands, you really can't touch it. So in partnership with the town, we arranged to have the pond dredged. And we've recently installed plantings around the perimeter of it. And if you've, again, been down in that area recently, it looks beautiful. We've had many, many compliments on it. It's really opened up the entire vista from the mansion in a beautiful way. So we're very pleased with the way that project has turned out. We've also invested close to $275,000 in not only repairing, but improving many of the trails in Waveny. And again, the town has joined with us on that project. We've also joined with the Garden Club in restoring the Parterre garden, which is the formal garden to the right, or excuse me, to the left of the mansion as you're looking at it. And we are in the process of re-landscaping the front or the forecourt of Waveney House. We had hoped to be completed with that project this year, but due to difficulties getting certain plant materials, et cetera, that's going to creep into next year. But we're hopeful that by next summer, all of the landscaping will be completed in the forecourt. And then we've taken on, I won't go into detail on all of these, but we've taken on a number of maintenance projects. Some of these are just projects that have been needed. Some of these are the result of some of the capital improvement projects that we've undertaken where there becomes a recurring maintenance need, and we've taken those on as well. So this gives you an idea of what we've been involved in to date. I think one of the main takeaways from this slide, however, is that at least to date on these major improvements, while we're very grateful for the town's contribution, the fact of the matter is the Waveney Park Conservancy and our contributors and major patrons have done the majority of the funding for these projects. And in the future, we're going to be asking for slightly more equity from the town in terms of the projects that we approach. Next question is, what have we learned in the past 6 years? Number one, we've learned that we have had considerable fundraising success and that there's a strong appetite in town to support Waveney Park from our residents. But as we look out not only at some of the known maintenance needs that are out there, but if we also look out at some of the projects that are summarized in our new 5-year plan or master plan, we don't think that we're going to be able to do it all. We're going to need to have some commitment from the town that we can rely upon to not only complete these projects, but to also stay on top of some of the maintenance that's required. And I'll come to a little bit more detail on our master plan in just a moment. You should, by the way, have a copy of that on your tablets, I believe. A next point I'll just make, and again, this should be quite obvious to most people, but it's become even more obvious in recent COVID times, is that town residents value Waveney extremely highly. And all you have to do is go into the park these days and speak with anyone, and you'll hear all sorts of superlatives. You'll hear people say it's a crown jewel of New Canaan, it's a godsend during COVID, it's a critical sanctuary, and other statements along those lines. But it's a highly, highly valued asset to many of our residents. But ironically, despite the fact that it's so highly valued and despite the fact that it's so heavily utilized, town funding for Waveney Park in comparison to other town recreational assets such as the athletic fields, playgrounds, library, Bristow Sanctuary is actually extremely low. And it's quite notable that Waveney receives almost no dedicated funding. Most of the funding that we've received from the town has been on a discrete project by project basis. And while we're grateful for that support, the fact of the matter is that type of funding can be cumbersome, frequently quite inefficient, and the uncertainty can interfere with our planning. And finally, the last point I'll make on this page is that private benefactors are willing to give generously to support and improve Waveney, but they want the town to have more skin in the game. And this point was actually just driven home to me quite notably about a month ago when I had a conversation with Trip Killam, who is the executive director of the Jenia Foundation, which has been the primary funder for the Meadow. And Trip very generously once again offered to give a donation or a grant to the Waveney Park Conservancy for this coming year of $140,000, $90,000 towards completing the Meadow work, and another $50,000 towards supporting the hiring of an executive director, which we're in the process of doing. But in offering that support, he said, but you know what, we'd really like to see the town stepping up and doing more in the park as well. And that's a refrain that we've heard from other investors or benefactors as well. And this leads into where we're going. We recently completed a master plan that looks out over the next 5 years. Just to provide a little bit of background, that plan was developed by Catherine Herman, who's a local landscape architect, although she does projects throughout the country. She's very well regarded. And Catherine and her team came into the park, inspected it, and noted a number of different improvement opportunities that they saw. And we combined their input with input that we received by talking to a number of different constituencies in town. And it was through both of those inputs that our master plan ultimately was developed. And again, I won't go into the detail on every one of the elements in it, but this table provides a quick summary of the subject areas of the different projects that we've identified and would like to undertake. And it provides an estimated cost range for them as well. And I'll just spin through this quickly, but the master plan envisions beautifying the South Avenue entrance. It envisions installing native plantings up the entry drive between South Avenue and the mansion and the walking trail there. It envisions beautifying and improving the parking and utility areas closer to the mansion house. It envisions beautifying and re-landscaping behind the home. So we've done the front of the house, but we'd like to do behind the home at some point. It envisions helping make some provisions to better landscape some of the outbuildings. And here's an area where we may be able to help the carriage house and the Powerhouse Theater with some of their landscaping. It envisions putting in new mow patterns for the fields behind Waveny that could be quite interesting. And then it envisions beautifying the Lapham Road entrance. Then there's an 8th project, and that's what is listed here as the Woodlands Trail Sound Remediation Project. I'm going to change that name and just say it's the Merritt Park Trail Project. And for any of you who are familiar with the trail that abuts the Merritt Parkway in Waveney, you'll know that oftentimes the trail there is not in the same sort of state of repair as the rest of the trails throughout the park. But more importantly, and we hear this time and again from patrons of the park, you're extremely exposed to both the sight and the sound from the Merritt Parkway. And a number of our visitors have repeatedly asked, is there something that could be done about that? And so in looking at that, Catherine Herman recommended that we consider coming up with a plan to attenuate sight and sound along the Merritt Parkway Trail and improve that trail. And as you can see here, this is a really big project as she has it scoped out, $3.5 to $4.5 million. What I will tell you right now is that envisions an extremely thorough project to attenuate sight and sound, probably involving potentially moving the trail inward somewhat, and also using earthen berming along the entire perimeter of the trail. We actually believe that there may be much more economical ways to attack this, which could significantly lower that cost. It's still going to be a big project, but it may not be as big as the project envisioned here. Bottom line, though, is that we won't know for sure until we've allocated some monies and had the opportunity to do engineering studies and additional research on what that project might entail. And I'll speak a little bit more about what we envision there in just a moment. So as you can see, we've got some ambitious ideas. And this leads to a request that I would like to make to the town council. And we've already spoken with the selectmen about this, as well as the Board of Finance. And we've also received an endorsement of this idea from Parks and Rec. But the Waveney Park Conservancy requests that the 2023 to 2028 Parks Department capital budget include a minimum $300,000 annual dedicated and recurring allocation for Waveney Park improvements. And in return for that, the Conservancy will contribute a minimum of $250,000 per annum towards capital projects. And we would also anticipate having to fund from our own funds $45,000 to $50,000 a year in incremental maintenance to maintain some of the completed capital projects that we've been involved with. Each of the individual projects and initiatives will be presented to the appropriate town personnel and town bodies for approval, as is currently the case. And from our point of view, recurring funding at the $300,000 level per annum will do a number of things. Number one, it will enable us to significantly accelerate completion of some of the critical projects that we've identified. It will streamline the approval processes and reduce cycle times in launching new projects. We won't have to get one-off allocations each time we come up with a new project. It will help share some of the funding burdens that Wavy Park Conservancy has to support its administration, as well as the increasing maintenance needs in the park. And it will demonstrate to the town's commitment to patrons and key benefactors. In the next slide, is a budget projection and cash reconciliation. And I'll just warn that this is somewhat of a rough effort. I expect that these numbers will change to some degree. And I expect that some of the priorities implied in this will also change somewhat, but I think directionally it's correct. I'll point out a few things on this slide. One is that we would anticipate bringing in revenues, and this is inclusive of the town's recurring allocation that we're requesting. If you look at it over a 5-year period of time, somewhat over $700,000 per year. If you look at the way that we're going to spend these funds, and again, the timing on this may change a little bit, but I think it's close. We would anticipate in 2022, not only being able to complete all of our existing projects, of being able to complete the Meadow, being able to complete the forecourt restoration, and also do some work on the dumpster area, but we would also try to get a head start on the master plan projects labeled A through F and H, which are all of the projects with the exception of the Merritt Parkway Trail project. And we think with the funding requests that we're making, that it's possible we'll be able to complete all of those projects by 2024, which would have a transformational effect on the appearance of the park. Finally, we would anticipate spending $50,000 a year for the next 3 years to study the Merritt Parkway Trail project. It would be our hope that by the end of 2024, we would actually have developed not only a number of different options at different price points for doing this project, but that we would, that we'd made some progress on identifying potential contractors, et cetera, that could help us. And if that is in fact where we are at 2024, then we would anticipate launching that project in 2025 and 2026. So right now we don't have any expense allocated towards those master plan projects in those years. But again, we would envision actually beginning work at a fairly significant level on the Merritt Parkway Trail project during those years. So that more or less completes my formal presentation. I'll just summarize by saying a couple of things. One is that we asked the town council to support this recurring dedicated allocation of $300,000 per annum for Waveny Park improvements. We're confident that we have the list of projects that will absorb those costs or those funds effectively. And we're committed to partnering with the town financially to contribute very meaningfully to those efforts. And we think that those efforts will have a transformational effect on the park and be extremely well received by a very large number of town residents. So again, that concludes my formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And I'll try and get out of this screen share as well.
Thank you, Steve. That is some presentation. That's really just amazing. Okay, do we have questions from the council? Just raise your hand and we'll take them one at a time. Anybody have a question for Steve or comment? Let's see. Anybody? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Maria. Sorry.
You said you have support from Parks and Rec. What does that look like? Because it seems to me a lot of this it overlaps with what the Parks and Rec department would normally do and maintain and budget for. Although it's taking it to, a different level.
Well, that's not quite correct. What we gave the same presentation to Parks and Rec and said we're going to be requesting an incremental $300,000 dedicated to Waveny Park improvements. And the distinction here is that right now we get allocations in effect from the Parks and Rec budget. So the town does the mowing in the park. The town does debris removal after a storm. The town will do some repairs on trails and things of that nature. But it's doing sort of the minimum level of maintenance. It's not investing on a dedicated basis in significant capital improvements. And I would also argue that the amount of money that's being spent on the park as far as maintenance is concerned is not adequate. And we've been picking up the slack on that quite a bit. And so our point is that the town has been pairing with us periodically on a project by project basis. Some projects it contributes something, some projects it contributes nothing. But every time we have a project, we have to go through a process where it has to be inserted into the capital budget of the town, which, as you know, can be quite a arduous and long process. So that can delay our ability to do projects. And frankly speaking, at least until recently, the town has dedicated relatively few funds to capital improvements at Waveny, and it's left an organization like the Waveney Park Conservancy to do the majority of the heavy lifting as far as the funding. And we're at a point now where, number one, I think people are recognizing, my goodness, this is an incredible asset to the town. It's deserving of town support. It's getting an enormous amount of use. And while it's fine to ask private patrons to fund a meaningful portion of that, and people are certainly willing to do that, is it right to expect that private patrons are going to fund the vast majority of capital improvement projects within the park and significant sort of non-routine maintenance requirements in the park? And we're arguing, no, the town should be doing more. And we're saying it will also be extremely helpful if, as it does with other organizations, such as the New Canaan Athletic Foundation, if it provides us with a recurring budget allocation every year. And then we would have to get approval from various bodies such as Park and Rec, but the funds would be there, and that can accelerate how we do projects and how quickly we can attack projects, and it gives us certainty for our planning purposes. And I think it will raise the overall level of both maintenance as well as capital improvements within the park, which I think our residents are saying, this is something we really want. This is something that we really enjoy and we really value. We get a great deal of utility out of. And again, if that wasn't clear before COVID, it is certainly clear now.
I think it's a great idea, a great partnership. What I'm struggling with is the sort of control. It seems like it would be giving control to the Conservancy to initiate and follow through on projects. How will the town council, how involved will the town be when projects are moving forward?
The town will be very involved. Number one, there are 3 ex officio members from the town on our board: Kevin Moynihan, Tiger Man, and now George Bennington, who's the new chair of Parks and Rec. I would fully expect that at the very least, every project we undertake would have to be approved by Parks and Rec. Typically, we go through an informal process where we're working with key town employees as well. Certainly, we're speaking with Kevin, who's speaking with the selectmen. Certainly, we try to get a lot of input from Tiger and his team. And generally, it's only after consensus builds up that a project is appropriate that it will be launched. And certainly it requires, at a minimum, in this circumstance, at a minimum, would require approval from the Parks and Rec Commission. And then obviously, if you're talking about, well, we don't get involved in hardscape or buildings very often, but it could involve other commissions as well, such as P&Z, and in certain situations, if we've had to come before town council and get your approval. But this is not a blank check that we're asking for. We're just simply asking that these funds be allocated so that once town approvals are given, we can move quickly. But we're not asking for a blank check. We understand that we're going to need to get approval from the various town bodies.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Maria, I think, the Bach Amendment certainly protects the town. The Bach Amendment just says anything that happens on town land does have to come through the council at some point. So any major project, we would definitely have to approve going forward, so.
Typically, when the project is if it has town funds associated with it, the Department of Public Works has to manage the project. So we did that with the pond. We've done that with the NCAF projects as well. So that these would be similar, since the town funds would be on our side of the ledger. We're responsible for those and we would have to manage the project. That's part of the agreement.
Yeah, so there are protections in place. But that's a great question, Maria. Thank you. Any other questions from the council?
Steve, let me make a comment.
Sure.
Having been involved in the beginning of the Conservancy, certainly the town started with the idea that we didn't have a commitment up front that the Conservancy was going to raise funds and propose projects. I would also note that when we conceived of the Central Park Conservancy as the model, Central Park Conservancy runs Central Park by contract with the city. The city only contributes 20% of the maintenance, mainly security and stuff for Central Park. And I think they've gotten $700 or $800 million over the last 20 years donated for Central Park. So, I'm 100% behind Steve's proposal here because it is our park. We have an obligation to maintain it. It's much more used than historically. And the work they've done has just been amazing. And it's enabled them to attract donations like the Jenia Foundation and the Anderson family, which we never really thought of in the beginning. We thought we'd be raising a lot of more retail money. But, so I'm 100% behind Steve's proposal.
Thank you. Yeah, and obviously, you were on the council when this idea was born, and you were a huge part of putting this together. So this is something that'll live on and always have your stamp on it. So congratulations. This is just amazing what the Conservancy is doing. I had a question regarding the $50,000 executive director and how the Conservancy views that position, the responsibility, where that person might be located, et cetera. Steve, can you shed any more light on that for us?
Well, at the current time, it's going to be a part-time executive director. So she's going to give about 20 hours a week or he. And their general responsibility they're going to be helping us with administration. But their primary emphasis is going to be based on or looking at development type of activities for the park. So those might be making sure that the annual appeals go off. Those will be cultivating larger donors. Those may be setting up events as well that can raise funds for the park. So again, there's an administration function, there's a development function to it, and there's a raising awareness function as well. And they will also spend time helping to oversee and keep an eye on different projects that are going on, kick the contractors in the rear end, which we're having to do a lot of these days, to keep them moving along and just keeping track of things to make sure that what's supposed to be happening is happening. Although there are board members also that sort of typically act as liaisons for each project that we've got going on. But those are the kind of the three main buckets of responsibility for the person. And I expect to have an announcement about who we're going to be hiring very shortly.
That's great. So are you the genuine donation of the 50,000? You're anticipating that's an ongoing position, obviously. So that'll be part of the budgeting from here on out, I would imagine.
Well, what they've done is for this year, they will essentially grant us 25,000 early this year towards half of what we had budgeted for that position. It's actually going to work out to be potentially a little bit more, I have a feeling. And then they've said either at the end of the year or very early in 2023, they'll give us another 25,000 to apply towards covering that individual's compensation. And we've had another organization also offer to at least this year provide us with a significant chunk of money to help offset that individual's compensation as well.
Great.
Now, whether or not that will continue in future years, it's a little too soon to say. I'm always willing to ask, but whether or not we'll hit pay dirt, I'm not sure.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Steve while we have him? All right, Steve, thank you very much for your presentation. I mean, a lot of people.
Steve, I think Rita has her hand.
Oh, Rita, sorry. Go ahead, Rita. I'm sorry, I missed you.
No, no worries, no worries. It's not a question, it's more of a comment, because I'm very supportive of Waveney Park. I mean, just considering the sheer number of people who enjoy it, New Canaanites who enjoy it, the value that it represents in attracting people to the town. I just think it's something that we should be investing in. Literally, if you said I know this is not how we should look at it, but out of the 20,000 residents, if we said, hey, each person, can you give $15 to this park that you enjoy on almost a daily basis, I think it would be a no-brainer. But that's just a comment that I wanted to make.
Thank you. Yeah, and I will echo that, Steve. I think, a lot of people think that downtown New Canaan is the heart of New Canaan. Well, I would argue that the Waveny really is the soul of New Canaan, because that's the one thing that, it's the centering, calming place you can go. It's recreation. It's everything you'd want, walking trails. It's an amazing place. So thank you for all you're doing. And we really appreciate the presentation.
Well, thank all of you. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a good night.
You too. All right, number 9 on the agenda, we have budget meetings, review and discussion of budget meeting process and calendar. Who wants to take that? Tucker, you have that?
Yeah, I was just going to point out, I sent you all a revised schedule of your budget meetings, which will start in March. Didn't realize how many of you like to celebrate on St. Patrick's Day, so we switched one of those dates to accommodate you. So I've sent you all the calendar, you have it, but you start on the 15th, you'll go the 15th, the 16th, 22nd, 24th, and 30th. So you'll be hearing a lot more about it. Board of Selectmen, as Kevin said, started yesterday and will continue, and then Board of Finance. So that's really, I just wanted to put that on there, and then we'll have to officially vote on the date change for that meeting coming up on the agenda.
Great.
Unless anybody else has anything to add between Josh, and I see Anne has joined us as well. She's been on the meeting as well, so.
No, that's great. So we'll cover some of that calendar stuff in our committee reports as well. So let's move on to number 10, financial update. Josh is here. Update of financial results. Josh, you've got the floor.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Tucker, should I share my screen? I know everyone should have their.
Yeah, let me just see. I feel like I gave it to you when you came on, but let me just check. Okay. Good to go.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right. So in front of you, you have the year-to-date budget versus actual for December, ending December 31st, 2021, marking the halfway point in the year. And things are kind of just continuing on their trend. Starting on the revenue side, at this halfway point, we're at 60% of the expected tax collected, which puts us 5 million ahead of last year. The collection of prior year taxes is at 140% of what was budgeted, the 300,000. Which is pretty much on par with what we were last year. The third point, and something you've heard probably multiple times at this point, is building permits and conveyance fees are both up from what was expected. Building permits are twice what we collected last year, which is at 700,000 versus the 400,000, which is 84% of what we had budgeted for. And conveyance fees are pretty flat year over year, but from the 1.1 million that we expected and budgeted for, we have collected almost 4 million. So we're at 123% with that. As a whole, year over year, we are 8% ahead on the revenue side and 66% overall with what we have budgeted. As for the expense side, there aren't really many major things to highlight other than that we are about 3% behind from last year in terms of expenses, and at this 50% at the halfway point of the year, we're at 44% of expenditures. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for Josh? Everything looks like it's moving along normally, right, Josh? I mean, it doesn't look like you have any outliers there.
No, I think we're in a good place expenses wise, and ahead of what we have expected revenue wise, which is always a good thing.
All right, great. I can't see anybody, so I'll have to let me just, if you can, you want to get out of your screen share, we'll go to there you go. All right, good. Does anybody have any questions for Josh? All right, Josh, thank you very much. You got off easy tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it. All right, moving on to our next item. Let's talk about that meeting schedule revision. We need an approval to amend the 2022 regular meeting schedule by canceling the March 17th, 2022 regular meeting and scheduling a regular meeting on March 16th, the day earlier, 2022. Can we have a motion? I see Penny first, Maria second. All in favor? That looks unanimous. Thank you, Tucker, and thank you for everybody having St. Patty's Day off. That's a good move. All right, let's go into the committee reports. This is where we can talk about some of the budgeting items that we've gone through. We've actually talked a lot about having budget meetings set up with our liaisons, but let's walk through committee by committee, and then we'll have some feedback. Bylaws and ordinances, Tom and Hillary.
No active projects.
Yeah, said with an exclamation point.
I don't know what that was.
Okay. All right. You're up again. Education, Tom and Rita.
So I attended the Board of Ed meeting on Monday when they rolled out their the superintendent's budget, as well as a resource committee meeting of the Board of Ed today. And the sober reality is that the overall Board of Ed budget, inclusive of both operations and benefits, has surpassed $100 million, which no one's thrilled about. 8.6% annual increase, and you get peel away as to why that is, and it certainly has to do with healthcare costs. In particular, the way they're accounted for in the internal services fund. What we're learning is self-insured plans are inherently volatile in their performance, even though they're tremendously advantageous over the long term, or can be, and certainly that's the case of the Board of Ed plans. The long-term cost increase trend for the health plans is in the range of 3%, which is a phenomenal result. The problem is that we've been utilizing the advantages of those low costs in an almost an exaggerated way in recent years, and we've utilized that to keep the mill rate down, not by some conspiratorial plan, but just because ISF accounting is somewhat arcane, and COVID came along and some weird things happened. So really the healthcare numbers or the ISF contribution in recent years has been artificially sort of suppressed in outcome. So the question you might have is, if it's volatile, does that mean that the large increase projected for the next fiscal year is an aberration? It'll return to some lower trend line, and probably not. This is probably the new reality. There may be, certainly are ways to mitigate this so that we won't feel the full impact of it in the next budget year. So I imagine by the time we're done, the number is going to be lower than 100 million for this coming year. But over time, this probably is the new reality. It's a true reflection of what things cost. We just have had some halcyon years where the numbers have not disclosed the real costs. Is what it is.
Well, it sounds like we're going to be diving into that budget pretty extensively. So, Rita, you don't have anything on BOE, do you?
No, well, no, not to add to anything that Tom had said.
Okay.
I think he captured the issues.
Great, thank you. Finance and Government, Mark and Maria.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Maria and I don't have a whole lot to talk about with budget season coming up. And I don't want to steal any thunder from Christina or Penny. I was on the call last night, the joint meeting. And my only comment from a financial standpoint is the amount of inflation that'll be coming through the budget. And I think it's something we all have to appreciate. And also, Steve, maybe is this a good time to maybe just lump in the library comments, since you and I are, and this is the only time I'll get to speak. As you know, and Steve, jump in here if you want to echo anything, but you know, in terms of the building committee that Steve and I are on, maybe an update is that the library is progressing, as you all see, pouring of concrete. It seems to be on time and on budget, and I think you can all witness that. So, Steve, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, our last meeting on Friday, they went through some of the stumbling blocks that they've had in terms of trying to pour concrete through freezing temperatures, and they actually have a device that heats up the ground as they pour the concrete, and it's pretty amazing to hear the way they go through that stuff. But they've done a great job getting through the weather, and it's going along as planned. You'll see the foundation is coming down Maple Street at this point. So they've completed the pours on South Avenue, and they've turned the corner and they're coming down Maple Street pouring there. There was a little photo today of a class that came over from St. A's that watched and learned about concrete pour. So they're trying to integrate into the community as well. So it was fun. There was kids were out there watching the trucks pouring concrete. So, but everything's moving along. Everything's on budget, on time. So library continues to be excited about the progress. All right, up next.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
And I know I posted to you and Mark, but I think the probably other members of the council have similar kinds of concerns. You know, every day you pick up the newspaper and it is supply side, distribution problems and contracts not being able to meet that because prices have increased well beyond, expectations. So at this juncture, you say that the library is on time and on budget. With an analysis of what is facing everyone in the construction industry, is it anticipated that they'll be able to sustain that?
Yeah, I mean, that's crystal ball material, I think, at this point, but they will deal with delays and deal with a lot of the things that every project goes through. They were actually on the call last Friday. They were talking about a particular roofing material that they can't get a hold of, and we're talking about right now they're pouring foundations. They're already looking ahead to when they finish that roof. They need a certain kind of material, and they're trying to track it down. So they're steps ahead trying to get all this done, but no project of that magnitude ever goes according to schedule, and that's why you have contingency plans and all kinds of it's trying to anticipate sort of the worst case scenario, but so far so good.
Well, these are extraordinary times right now,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, Penny, I totally appreciate that, because as we listened to Tiger last night, I totally understand that. I guess the one thing I will say is that using a reputable contractor like Turner and getting the right subs in place and their ability to work ahead, as Steve kind of mentioned, and order ahead and lock in pricing is obviously helpful to some extent. I guess the one part that you can't control is labor costs.
Well, as I said, I know, we had chatted about this, but I think that the council should be, assured as much as you can assure anyone during these rather unusual times that obviously they're on top of it.
Thank you.
Can I add something, Steve?
Go ahead, Maria.
I just wanted to bring up ARPA a little bit. And I know last time we voted, I guess it's a consent, like a block. We did a block vote on multiple items. And there were some questions on some, but I felt like I didn't want to hold up particularly the teacher bonuses. So I felt like I had a vote on it. And I'm wondering if we should consider doing line item approvals when we get these ARPA requests coming in. And I'm curious what the rest of the town council, thinks about that. I don't think there's that many that it would be burdensome, but, I think I didn't, I felt a little bit pressured last time because I know I wanted to vote on certain things. I didn't want to hold it up. So curious what
I agree
everyone's
with you,
thinking.
Maria. I agree.
Yeah, Maria, I would second that.
Third.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I then for totally the same reasons. I wanted to make sure that that we weren't slowed down on getting the teacher bonuses in. That was my highest priority in the December meeting. But I think going forward, that's a great idea. Fully support.
Steve, it looks
Yeah,
like
I would agree with that.
Christina too.
I don't know if I'm the 5th or 10th or whatever it is, but it's Luke, and I definitely didn't want to hold up, getting them their bonus. I think Hillary, was you that said for Christmas, for the holiday season, it was important for them to receive it. And I know Rita, you were adamant about them getting their bonuses, but I think we're all on the same page that we should definitely revisit this now that those funds have been released.
Yes, I have a question. I mean, I voted against it, and it was hard to do. So I agree with Maria. Is it possible that if we were able to do things over again, that we could make a motion at that time to just line item vote it, or does it have to be an agreement that we do line item voting?
So the way this would work, if the council wants to break it out per project and vote on it line by line, we can do that. The Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen will pass it along to us, in a certain tranche, if you will. But we can break it up line by line. If there's a particular project in there that's controversial that the council doesn't support, we can certainly vote on it and pull it out. And the best way to do that is line by line. So that's really the only way to do it. So if there's no reason why we can't do that. Mark will just get more work that way, but.
Steve, I'm just thinking forward ahead on that one a little bit. As you know, we've requested and are partnering with the Community Foundation for the nonprofit piece of the COVID impact and ARPA funds. And I spoke, the deadline for application submission was Friday. And I spoke with Lauren at the Community Foundation today, and she said she had, I think, 35 applications.
Sure.
So what they're doing now is they're reviewing them. As the reason that we partnered with them is because they know the nonprofits best in New Canaan. And so they're reviewing them, and then they will work with us. So that we might have to dedicate a portion of the meeting because some of the requests are for $10,000. So we could have a number of them that we would have to review if we go one by one.
Well, that's a case of that's one particular line item. The whole reason we have the Community Foundation set up is so that we don't pick winners and losers. And I don't want to get into that. That would be one line item of X amount of dollars, and that's it. You can vote it up or down, but we're not going to delve into 5,000 for this charity, 10,000 for that charity. There's no way to go through that. I mean, that's the reason we're letting the experts do their thing.
Okay, good.
All right, anything else, Mark, before we move on?
Can I say something, Steve? It's Christina.
Yes. Hi, Christina.
I don't know how the community foundation will decide, or how much of the money will be distributed by the community foundation to nonprofits. But there's certainly some issues or some projects that will come forth that really need to be decided by town council. I don't think that deferring that decision helps us in any way.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we will decide on every single dollar of that ARPA money that gets spent. So that's our job. We have to vote on every single dollar. So, you know, we won't get into, we're not going to have to spend it all, obviously, because we've got that couple-year window where we don't have to go through all $6 million. But the community foundation portion of it, you know, we got the community foundation involved to specifically look at all the requests that come through for those nonprofits, and that's what we're talking about. We want to make sure that they're the ones that gauge the need, and they make a decision based on need, and that's what they're good at. So I think that's.
But you're asking the community foundation to make a decision on behalf of the town council.
Well, so no, what we're asking the community foundation to do is we're giving them X amount of dollars, and we're asking them to look through the request, multiple requests, and allocate according to the need that they see it, because they know all these organizations.
But we didn't vote to give them any amount, right?
We haven't voted on that yet. We have not voted on that yet.
I think it's a recommendation.
Steve, the way we posed it to the community foundation was for them to receive and then give advice back to the town. I don't think we expect them to make decisions. So they will explain their advice if they're saying, you know, this was $100,000 was applied for, but we don't think they need it, so we're recommending 60. But that's still a recommendation, not a decision.
So in that case, then the way that would work, just to recap, would be that we would then take that $100,000 or $500,000 that's broken out by the community foundation, and then we in a meeting, you'd want us to go through line by line and
no, because it has to go through the appropriation process. So it would first come back to the selectmen, and we make a recommendation to the Board of Finance, and then it would come to you.
Okay.
So some items may not get to you if the Board of Finance doesn't decide to pass them on. So.
Well, I think early in the process, though, there is the evaluation as to whether or not the request actually fits in the parameters of the ARPA funding.
That's a given.
I mean, when you've got 35 organizations, they're saying, oh my God, there's this money out there, and okay, let's put our proposal in. And so as to whether or not that really actually fits the bill, so to speak, of what the ARPA funds are designed to address, I'm sure there's going to be a lot in there that don't come anywhere near those parameters.
Well, the federal regulations finally came out final, so now we have better guidance as to what's
good.
And we did just for clarification purposes at our meeting with the foundation, was they knew our parameters and we set guidelines for them. So the goal is for them to have a list and a figure for us that we feel confident in, that then that would move through the process as the first selectman said, through the Board of Selectmen up through the Board of Finance, and then we all agree on that. And assuming they've done the job that we've asked.
Right.
One of the questions on the application was, how are you impacted by COVID? So they're going to have to make a case before they even submit the application for that.
Tucker, could you make the questionnaire available to the town council so that we're more informed as to what questions are being asked?
It's right on the website. It's been on the website for a month. The link to all the applications, I'll forward it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
But it was out there. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, the applications were due on a certain date, in I think January 15th. So, obviously this is something that will come forth through the process, in the appropriation process.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Maria. All right, Health and Human Services, Kim and Penny.
Kim, are you going to report this time?
So the meeting was on January 6th. Penny and I were both there. It's good news that we're all in great hands with Dr. Harrison Pierce being reelected as the chair and Alyssa McKenzie as the secretary. The committee has 7 members and 2 vacancies, so they're looking for 2 people to join the committee. If anyone has any recommendations, that would be great. Jen Eilson, Director of Health, presented vaccine data, which is at this point a little bit old, but I can report that 16,233 residents are fully vaccinated, so that's 80.23%. 94.4% of our town population has at least 1 dose. The health department has given 21,130 doses to date, which I thought was amazing, with the help of human services, volunteers, volunteer nurses, and medical staff. Overall, it was an extremely busy month, as we can all gather for the month of December. Health department had 15 clinics. They partnered with Canaan Public Schools to have a clinic at the high school. The Department of Health announced that the vaccine was available for ages 12 to 15. So that's why they added that clinic very quickly. Oh, sorry. Someone want to say something? They conducted rapid tests, 649 rapid tests with 104 positive for a 16% positivity rate. Health department partnered with Waveny, and they were very thankful for that partnership to administer PCR tests. 587 tests were administered, 46% positive for a 7.84 positivity rate. Between Christmas and New Year's, we all, look at the news and have friends and relatives that have gotten COVID. The positivity rate went way up to 17.58. Hospitalizations are going up. Stanford Hospital on the day of this meeting, which was January 6th, had 91 COVID patients with 14 in the ICU. It was reported that the 14 in the ICU were unvaccinated. I asked about children, and Dr. Pierce said that children with COVID are being treated at Yale and Columbia. And he did note that there's a huge spike in pediatric psychiatric cases in the inpatient settings. I want to just move ahead to Bethany Zara's report, Health and Head of Human Services. And I learned a lot about what that department does, but they deal with domestic violence cases, behavioral health, the food pantry. They partnered with the New Canaan Police Department for a winter coat drive. They had a coat rack at the food pantry for people that needed coats. They do home visits and telehealth visits with seniors, holiday programs for residents, and they did a flu vaccine where they administered 370 flu vaccines. They talked about kids in crisis counselor that's needed for Sachs Middle School. That search is still pending. They haven't found anyone yet, and they upped the salary by $5,000. And the meeting ended with, I think, something that's appropriate to what we're going into budget season, just a discussion and a general consensus that it would be great for more ARPA funds to address health issues like testing kits, PCR access, addressing behavioral health problems. And it was suggested that the Health and Human Services Committee provide more guidance to the town and the Town Council on health needs and priorities for the coming budget cycle in ARPA. Thank you. Penny, do you want to add anything?
This is your first meeting, so you did well. Thank you very much. I think a takeaway is the related effects of COVID, and it really is affecting the mental health in all age groups. So they're dealing with issues that they have not had to deal with previously. So it's and a number of them are very complicated, multi-layered issues. I had occasion to be in the department last week, and I was just chatting as a, when you get into budget time, I want you to really be, really frank and above board on whether or not we have enough staffing in the department, as to whether or not, if COVID then starts to not be as time consuming and resources consuming as it is right now, then, and you can get back down to a more normal kind of workflow, then yes, staffing is fine. And obviously right now with, the surge and all of the requirements of testing and vaccinating and so forth, it's putting some stress on the department. And I was then relatedly concerned about the mental health of our staff, as to how long they can be, sustained at the pace that they are required to be putting forth. And I think all's good with them. So it was nice to have that reassurance that they're on top of it. And yes, they're stressed, but this isn't going to last forever, kind of thing.
That's great. Thank you, Penny. And Kevin, the updates that you give weekly are very much appreciated. So, that's a very comprehensive update that goes out to the town. One of the things that I'm sure is going to come up is the federal home testing link that you can sign up per family. I guess you can get 4 free tests. So I'm sure you'll have that in one of the, is there a link or anything on the website yet, on the town website?
I don't think we put a link up yet, Steve. It just came up yesterday, the day before. So, yeah.
Okay, so we'll get that out. All right, infrastructure and utilities, Christina and Penny.
Well, we had a 3-hour and 15-minute deep dive into the budget last night. I will say that Tiger's presentations are colorful and comprehensive and really very, very easy to follow. The budget's up, 6.6%, but their challenges are dramatically up. As we're lawnmowers are twice the cost of what they were last year, and it follows through in all of their equipment. And so we'll be going through it line by line when it comes to us, but it was a very thorough and comprehensive presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Christina, anything to add, or are you okay?
Well, I just want to say it's hard to paraphrase what Tiger presented because his presentations are very well done, and he's online so he can speak to it. But he made some great inroads on paving and in holding some of the prices. I think that he's buttoned up in terms of expenses on roads, which we know is a significant portion of the budget. There's some of the pricing or estimates on the building side seem kind of high, but I think it's reflective of what we're going through in the economy. And the same thing goes for equipment. The prices are not what we had seen in years past, and the purchase of automobiles will also be impacting the budget, and it's what contributes to the 6.6% increase in the budget. So I am watching Tiger to see how well he navigates through this, because it's going to be a tough times ahead.
We have confidence. We have a bumper sticker ready to go. 2022 is the year of smooth roads in New Canaan.
Yes,
Smooth
I think
roads.
we're there already. Yes.
Great. All right. Land use and
Thanks,
rec.
Tiger.
Robin and Luke.
Yeah, hi. So Luke and I are looking to schedule a meeting for the first week or second week of February. The BOF discusses Parks and Rec on the 15th, and maybe Conservation as well. I didn't see on the schedule, but so looking to get it in before then. The Parks and Rec meeting, there was an election held for commission chair, and George Bennington became the chair. Francesca Segalis was voted in as secretary. Next was New Canaan Scouts. Sean Gleason, the pack leader and town coordinator for New Canaan Scouts, presented to Parks and Rec about the Scouts Rockets and Ice Cream event to be held again at Waveny, but on an expanded scale. So they're looking, the event will have about 300 participants. It's going to be June 7th from 6 to 7:30. They'll be launching rockets from the driving range, but John Howe of the Parks Department said there was no issue, so it passed unanimously by Parks and Rec. Waveney Conservancy presented, and it was the presentation that we saw tonight. Then Alex Warner, who's a New Canaan High School student, he presented an Eagle project, which would add artificial structures to the pond to create habitat for trout and fish, as well as adding a kiosk to Mill Pond with information about fishing and the environment. He's working with the Department of Public Works, and that motion passed. Next, Doug Zumbach presented for a Caffeine and Carburetors event at Waveney Park. His first choice was a date of October 16th. However, he hasn't heard back from the high school yet if there will be a track meet. His second choice was October 23rd, and his third choice was October 30th. However, Tucker Murphy said the issue was the school's parking lots, as the schools don't know yet dates for events like the SATs and PSATs. Parks and Rec asked Mr. Zumbach to come back for next month, but he said due to planning, he really needed a date. And so Tucker Murphy said Parks and Rec could have a special meeting after the special events committee meeting where they would discuss this. And then the last was the Greenwich Food and Wine Festival presented. The presenters were Margot Brandy and Suni Unger. They had proposed dates of having their Food and Wine Festival, which would be renamed the Serendipity Food and Wine Festival, for October 28th, 29th, and 30th. However, B of the Rec Department said those dates are currently not available, and not all of them. This would be a 3-day event where they said it would bring in about 300 people a day. Bill Knapp was concerned about damage to the fields with so many people over 3 days, especially if the fields are wet. The organizers said that they've done this in Greenwich and they've taken care of the property there. Parks and Rec asked for the organizers to come back next month with more information before they make a decision. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, public safety, Rita and Mike.
Rita, I'll start off. On police, we're at the commission meeting tonight. Chief gave his quick, what he called Reader's Digest view of the budget. His capital request is down about 26%. The overall budget increase that he's looking for is about, I think, 3.1, and almost the entirety of that is related to labor costs and the settlement of the new labor agreement. His overall budget, he also said, is about 90% or so is dedicated to labor cost as well. So nothing really too radical from anything we've seen in the past. The police building, I know Kevin's on the line here. I know there was some delay in getting a presentation to the Board of Finance for a variety of reasons. There was December holidays, 220 was taking up a lot of air, rightfully so. So a presentation will be made to the Board of Finance, I think, in February, and we'll keep that moving along. And let's see what else. The spate of car thefts is continuing to increase. I think the statistic tonight was, I think all but one of the cars that was stolen was unlocked and had the keys inside the vehicle. So again, the chief wants the community to be aware and be vigilant in making sure, keep the keys out of your car and lock them. There was one other point I had for the police. I've mentioned this in the past. I just thought it was something to keep in mind, and maybe there's more coordination that can be done with the CFO for the town. The aging report for monies that are owed to the PD, I think from Eversource, I think is mostly the amount that's outstanding for about 33,000 that's been outstanding for over 120 days. So whatever, the town can do, whether we have to have our attorneys, whatever pressure points they can raise, that's a lot of time for an entity like Eversource to owe the town money, and that's substantial dollars. So I think that's important. However, the PD and the town can work together on pushing Eversource to get that money in the door. I think is time well spent. As far as the fire department goes, the fire department's going to be presenting its budget to the first selectman, I believe, on January 25th. So I'm also looking to schedule a meeting with the liaisons with the FDPD and the EMS, hopefully in the next week or two. So I'm just working on some scheduling issues there. And just some other issues with the fire department. They had a surge of COVID, but they were able to successfully, manage the staffing challenges that presented. I think they had some help from the other towns when that was needed in their joint cooperation agreements. The rescue truck is being painted. Hopefully we'll get it this year, but there's been no commitment. I think they're running a little bit behind on that. Let's see if there was anything else in particular. Oh, just something, two small things. There was some damage to the chief's truck and another vehicle because of that ice storm that we had the other day, or whatever, 2 weeks ago. But other than that, the fire department's moving along as is, and we'll just focus on the budget moving forward. That's it.
That's great, Mike. Thank you. Rita, anything? Oh, you're muted, Rita.
Oh, sorry. Couple things just because I was surprised. I didn't know about them. I didn't realize that animal control is a part of the police budget, and their budget actually is increasing about 6%, but it's due to replacing an animal control officer. So I thought that was interesting. And although the capital costs are down, again, what represents the capital costs is just something interesting to note. Things like bulletproof vests actually expire, so you have to replace them. In-car cameras, which are required by law now, that's part of the capital request, which I also thought was interesting. And fixed license plate readers are also part of the capital request. And then the other thing, just to comment on the break-ins, the chief mentioned that they are increasing patrols, and that this problem with, smash and grab and the car break-ins and also actually mail package break-ins is it's increasing all over the country. This is something that has been happening, and it's something that a lot of communities are facing and something that we have to address. And so they are increasing their vigilance and increasing the patrols in response.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Rita. And I know in the coming week, they're also talking about having a sort of a behind the scenes meeting to take a look at the security camera issue. So we'll get a report back next time we get together.
That was the other item. It wasn't necessarily that they weren't working, but that they weren't effective in being able to catch the folks because there were so many cars or something that were going in and out at that particular time. So it wasn't necessarily that they weren't working, but it's how they were using them, I think. But yeah, to your point, they're going to investigate further.
Great. Thank you so much. And Ann Kelly Lenz is on the call here, and she's been quietly observing us. So I want to first of all say hello, because I don't think any of us have really met you in person. So we appreciate you joining us and look forward to working with you. You want to just say hello to everybody and introduce yourself?
Both. I started this week. I came from Wilton. I've been in government from about 15, 20 years. Prior to that was private sector and hedge fund. I'm really looking forward and I'm very excited joining the team. I've met so many people, and whether they're just being nice to me now until they ease me in, I don't know. But so far, everybody's been great, and I'm very excited to move forward with everybody.
Well, we feel like a Major League Baseball team that's still one of the best players in the league. So, we're very, very happy to have you. So welcome aboard. Looking forward to working.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
Steve, I'm glad you did that, because when I gave my update, I didn't realize who AKL was until so I'm glad we got to introduce her. And Josh did a great job with the budget. I would ask you, if we could, Tiger is always hanging in here for 3.5-hour meetings, but back-to-back meetings is a bit tough on the staff. If we could have maybe Josh's financial update earlier in the agenda, it would be helpful. Ann will probably want to hang in like Tiger does, and Tucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to get Josh in and out as quick as we can. Anytime anybody needs that accommodation, we're happy to do it. So sometimes these meetings do go a little long, and I apologize. I've had a goal of trying to get them over by 9:30 at the latest. It's 9:38. 9 is actually the real goal, but 9:30 is the sort of the backstop. So it's time to go. And I want to thank everybody for coming on to the Zoom meetings, and hopefully next time we meet, we'll be in the room together. So thank you again.
Need a motion to adjourn.
I need a
Looking
motion.
forward to seeing everyone in person.
I saw Christina first and Kim second.
You're all in favor, I assume.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.